I'm John Batchelor, John Fund, and David Drucker, my professionals, along with Thaddeus McCotter, my colleague, are here. Sean Trendy of The Real Clear Politics tells me on poll numbers and midterms, it's straightforward. The president's approval rating determines the outcome of the midterms, for or against the president's party. At this point, the president's average on RCP is around 44. That's a pickup of 6 or 7 Republican seats, which is enough to swing the Senate, make Harry Reid the minority leader if he survives the challenge. However, the opportunity here is for the Democrats to boost those numbers through strong action by the White House up towards 50. It seems a bridge too far, but anything's possible. Have you heard of Crimea? And if that happens, the Harry Reid returns as the majority leader and maybe even a pickup in the Senate. Conversely, you head towards 40, where we've been before with the Affordable Care Act fiasco of last fall. At that point, the Republicans creep very close to a 10-seat pickup. Why that matters is because the bounce of the ball means that in 16, because so many Republicans are vulnerable in Democratic districts, it's likely that it will swing back 5 seats to the Democrats. So if the Republicans hope to hold the Senate majority through this cycle and into the next, I'm talking like a pollster here, I just learned the Monte Carlo system, they need a 10-seat pickup. The president can see that. Mr. Fund, is that an explanation for the president's sudden feverish activity about this matter in Crimea tonight?
I think more likely the president is just embarrassed at having been caught up short once again dealing with Vladimir Putin. Remember, it was only on Thursday of last week that the Russia's foreign minister assured Obama and John Kerry that they had no intention of invading Ukraine. They invaded the next morning. I think the president feels embarrassed, and he is no longer leading from behind. He's decided to step ahead in front of the curtain and actually look more visible on foreign policy.
Mr. Drucker, a 10-seat pickup at 40% approval, which is a disaster for the White House. Is there an easy way to fight this?
Well, I think that, look, it's going to come down to really domestic issues, but it's possible that foreign policy matters like this could pile on to the president in a sense, in a death by a thousand cuts sort of way. And I suspect it's possible that the president, despite what he says about how he handled Syria, remembers that he didn't look very good throughout that whole episode. His numbers were extremely low. And in some sense, he was rescued by the Republicans shutting down the government, and attention turned. But it was a low point if you just look at his approvals and sort of what Americans, I think, thought of his leadership, at least voters. And I think he wants to avoid that, and he's working hard to do that, which is why I agree with John, seems to be a lot more proactive, at least initially here, a lot more tough talking, at least judged by his own standards, than he was last summer.
I go along with that. How do you sanction a major European power that is the supplier of the energy for all of the industries of Western Europe? Thaddeus, do you have a thought about the president and fighting hard? He's a political animal. He must be. The White House only does things if it helps them at the polls or helps them in elections. How do you see him playing this tonight? Is he being proactive, as Mr. Fund and Mr. Drucker indicate, because he's worried about his polls?
Well, I would hope that he's doing it because he's worried about America and her allies. And I think that when we talk about the polling data that's out there, John, this is really going to be a test of the Republican Party. If the president comes forward with a responsible policy for addressing Russia's coercion of the democracy of Ukraine, it is incumbent upon the Republicans to get behind it and support it and let that policy start at the water's edge and let the world hear it. And they should not pay any attention to the polling data that might go up because the president was successful in this instance.
Successful? What would that look like, Thaddeus? Do you have because right now the president's talking about sanctioning Russia. Nobody knows what that means, but that's what he's talking about.
Well, that's because of, as we spoke about earlier, there was no policy put in place, no planning under the Bush administration or the Obama administration post-Georgia. But I think that John Fund was right. The best way to do it is for the world to be united in denouncing it, to find ways to sanction them without hurting our own domestic economies, and let the markets make their judgment that Russia is not a first world economy. It is a kleptocracy that needs a change.
Mr. Fund, kicking Russia out of the G8, or at least not showing up at Sochi for the G8 meeting. I note, by the way, that Italy says that it will show up, so that there's not uniformity right now. There might have to be some jawboning. Or asking Russia to take a back seat at the WTO. Is that going to impress the American people? Does that move the story, John? I know I'm being cynical. I'm saying that the president thinks of his polls, but do the American people respond to those sort of, what you'd have to say, trade arcana?
Well, let me flip that a little bit and say, believe it or not, Vladimir Putin worries a lot about the Russian polls. His support is below 60% even before this crisis started. The Russian economy is clearly slowing down. And the Kremlin's own pollster, and these numbers were just leaked this evening, 73% of Russians surveyed said they opposed intervention in Ukraine. Only 15% supported it. And even among members of the Liberal Democratic, the old Communist Party, support for intervention in Ukraine is only about 25%. People are not buying Putin's propaganda in Russia, and Russians have long, as much as they have been suspicious of the West, they yearn to be accepted and to be respected by the West. Being kicked out of these organizations deals a body blow to many Russians, including the ones with money and influence, who do have some influence over Vladimir Putin, that this is clearly isolating Russia and making anyone associated with the Putin regime a pariah.
David, you have an excellent piece up on the Senate midterm. Do you see an advantage to any one member of the Republican Party running for Senate election?
I think that foreign policy would have to become a major issue in the debate. If that were to happen, the one I think of off the top of my head is Tom Cotton running in Arkansas, because of his recent military background. And he's pretty steeped in these matters, and he would at least be positioned to go on the attack because he has deep knowledge about stuff like this. But I still contend this is going to be about Obama's approval, and it's going to be about the health care law, and those are like it's a 1-2 punch there that the president has to, fight through. And if he can get his approvals above 45 consistently, he still needs the health care law to be in a better position, because people can approve of him because he's a historical figure, still not like his health care law, and that could be enough to make the election look as though his approval was at 42 or 43%, even if he's at 46 or 47.
Thaddeus, 20 seconds. Is Barack Obama the man to make an argument against the Russian bear?
I think he can, if he forgets all the equivocation that he had during the Cold War.
Thaddeus McCotter, WJR, my colleague and co-host. Thank you, Thaddeus. And John Fund and David Drucker, my professionals. John Fund of the National Review Online, David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. I'm John Batchelor.